Assalamu alaikum. Hi, I am Naufal, a public prosecutor from the Prosecutor General's office. I'm very excited to have this session on electronic evidence here today. I'll be very brief in introducing our expert here today, Mr. Zahid. Zahid has been involved in drafting the electronic evidence chapter of our Evidence Act. And subsequent to that, he was also involved in drafting the Penal Code amendments regarding cybercrime, which was ratified in December of last year. So he's fairly familiar with our legal system, especially relating to electronic evidence. Currently, he is here on a mission by UNDP. He is helping us draft a bench book as well as a handbook for prosecutors and investigators on electronic evidence. He is not here on official capacity as a consultant for UNDP here now. He's just here on his own voluntarily because he wanted to have this public lecture and share his knowledge and maybe answer a few questions that the audience might have. So thank you, Zahid, for volunteering your time and being with us here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Naufal. Thank you very much. It was very kind of Naufal as an opportunity to say, well, would you like to do a lecture? And everybody made it quite clear that this was not being done on behalf of UNDP. They were said that we're not doing it on behalf of UNDP. He said, I'm not doing it on UNDP. I'm saying we're not doing it on behalf of UNDP. Not that we don't like UNDP. UNDP is great. It's just that I'm not doing it on their behalf. So, Assalamu alaikum. It's a pleasure to be here. For those who are attending, thank you so much for coming and taking out time. I'm volunteering to, basically discuss some aspects of electronic evidence. I'm a barrister by profession, so maybe I should do some introduction. So I'm a barrister. I trained in the UK. I practice in three or four different jurisdictions. Yeah, so much for a lawyer. I actually am Pakistani. So basically, I also have rights of practice as a Supreme Court attorney within Pakistan. I run offices there. I run an office in Dubai, so I'm working with the Dubai government on several issues. Particularly, I have an office inside the Dubai government, which is kind of fun to have. Also, separately, I have an office in Washington, D.C. in the U.S., so we look at U.S. matters as well. And of course, traditionally, not an office, but at least you're familiar with the U.K. and Commonwealth. And what I've done in the last few years, and I created a speciality, not out of choice, but out of what we say fate or just things that had happened, was that basically I got pulled into technology and some of the work that I was doing. That then led to things like logistics and trade facilitation. I don't know if anybody is aware of trade facilitation or customs and other things like transport and legislation and other legislation. So I was writing a lot of legislation early in my life. And then as a result of that, something called the Council of Europe, I don't know if you ever heard of the Council of Europe, but it's not the European Union, yeah? It's different. The Council of Europe has a treaty, a convention on cybercrime. It's currently the only treaty on cybercrime and electronic evidence. And so I started working with them, and I spent, I've now, I think, 40 plus at least countries where I've done either legislative drafting or advisory or training of the judiciary or prosecutors, etc. And I've done the similar things here also as well in Maldives. But here we've done it more extensively. Like there are a few countries where I've spent a lot of time. Maldives is one of them. And having the opportunity to look at the Evidence Act, for instance, or other areas, etc. So that's what I do. I spend my time basically doing my regular work and my voluntary time, sort of semi-voluntary, I would say, doing this other things related to electronic evidence, which is kind of funny because everybody thinks, well, electronic evidence ought to be something, specialized, etc. So this is a very short presentation. The only thing I have to say with regard to electronic evidence is there's nothing new. Yeah, this is the running joke between me and Naufal. And I could just end the presentation here and say, thank you, you can go home. But we'll talk more about it, I'm just kidding. The biggest challenge we generally have when we are trying to explain as experts regarding electronic evidence is that everybody thinks it's something very special. It's something very new. It must be very specialized. And you cannot get into it or assess it as judges or lawyers because it's so special. And while this was true in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, since then the world has recognized that there's nothing particularly special when it comes to the evidential part of electronic, apart from the technical elements, than regular evidence that one basically looks at. So you will talk about that as a theme basically for today as well. But before I start, let me ask a question. How many of you in the audience are lawyers? Raise your hands. Oh my goodness. Almost everybody. Can I ask a question? How many of you are not lawyers? That's how I should have asked. Excellent. What are you doing here? Thank you for coming. Really appreciate it. I don't know what I'll do today. We have 2 hours. I'm happy to talk about various things. I'll give you some options, and I'd like to basically have the audience judge where I should go with this conversation. So I don't want to bore you with something that was set through PowerPoint slides, because people die through PowerPoint slides usually. They will just keel over and go to sleep. So I want this to be interesting for you. I want it to be something that you are interested to know. I don't want to waste your time with things which are technical and you couldn't care less. So here's what we can cover, and some of it will be electronic evidence, and as Naufal said, look, you can talk about anything. We can literally talk about anything. We would like to sort of contain it within the broad areas of the law, if we can. Would like to even further contain it, if possible, between the broad areas of technology. If there's anything about technology that you're interested, any particular type of technology that at least I can explain. I don't say that I know everything, but if there's anything specific, okay, so we can try to do that. So I'll give you some options, right? We could talk today about and now this will be the boring legal stuff, the Evidence Act, and what has changed in the Evidence Act. And with respect to especially 65, 66, and 67, there are 3 sections. Would you like to do sort of let's know more about what this is, because that's an area that I assisted in drafting. So that's one area that we can go into. Second, we can look at something else about electronic evidence, which is, and this is where we split between 2. Electronic evidence that relates to criminal matters. Okay, that's a separate matter. Although the section might be the same, but the way you apply it is different. And electronic evidence with respect to civil matters. There's a whole bunch of different legislation that might come into play. So that's another thing that you can think about if you're interested in that. I have here working on criminal issues mostly, but the issue of civil evidence comes up as well. So 65, 66, 67, civil or criminal evidence, how it's supposed to be adduced. Currently, I believe there's a recording going on. Do I need to consent? You don't have a data protection legislation in place yet. Okay, I don't know, right? But here's the question. So to what extent does CCTV camera, what are the rules around it? Are you interested in that? We can talk about it. What allows us to put it in, what doesn't? There's questions regarding chain of custody. Have anybody heard of chain of custody? Yeah, a lot of lawyers are going, yeah, this makes sense. Chain of custody. Now it's specifically mentioned in 66, definitely. 67, I think also. And we can talk about that a little bit. So I'm going to ask you to keep in mind. So if you like something, just remember it and ask me, and I will respond to those things. The other thing we can do is talk about things like AI. What is AI from a perspective that is not too technical? Okay, happy to explain what AI is, how it functions, what are large language models. So one of the things I like to do, if I can, is take very complex ideas and explain them simply. So if you want, I'm happy to discuss artificial intelligence, the different areas of it, what is LLM, how does it function, how does ChatGPT know what to say? It's one example. Also blockchain, this is something I did last time. So that was kind of interesting. And blockchain requires a number of things. You have to, first of all, understand something called encryption. Then understand, because of that, something called hashing. Because of that, understand something called blockchain. And then you can reach an understanding of what is Bitcoin. So if anybody is interested in that whole sort of, area, I'm happy to discuss that and explain that as well. You will be using your phones, because I have no access to a laptop today here. So you'll have to open your phones and do a few things. Now we could do also technology generally. We could talk about how IP addresses work, and people who may or may not be interested. How do you track somebody down using the IP address? Or what happens with respect to finding out who's been using, let's say, in this room, a device and communicating. Those are things we can also cover. So those are I think that's a lot, right? That's quite a bit, no? What do you think? Okay, so let's say that, and then there could be literally anything else that you're interested in discussing. We could basically do that. So we have 2 hours. I don't know what to do with the 2 hours, but thought 1 hour would be, but I think you'll see when we get into the conversation, this becomes interesting. How many people here understand Urdu or Hindi? Raise your hands. Anybody heard of Samaj Ki Diwar? Samaj is culture, the wall of culture, I mean, society. I don't know what this line is doing in front of me. I feel very disjointed from you. Anyway, so I'm going to move these two chairs, yeah? Excellent. So, okay, so any particular areas that you're interested in that you think we should discuss in an order of priority? It could be, doesn't have to be one, but one or two or three things. Anything that you think you'd like to understand? Or we can just go straight to having tea. I'm just joking, yes. Yes, absolutely. All of the above. Very nice. What else? That's nice. I'm glad you don't want to exclude anything from that, so that's interesting. That will definitely take us 2 hours, so we'll cover that. Anything? Thank you. Anything else? Yes? No? Not seeing any hands? Not interested in anything particular? We have one response which says, cover everything. Anything specific that you found from what I listed that would be interesting for you? And I'll list it again. I'll do it again. So there's the Evidence Act in its sections. There is a difference between criminal and civil law when it comes to evidence, particularly with digital, right? There is the, I think I mentioned blockchain, AI. I'm seeing hands, but you're not raising your hand. You see, this is the problem. You can't just say this, you have to raise your hands. So AI, blockchain, IP addresses, did I forget something else? Bitcoin, yes, exactly right. Blockchain and Bitcoin, yes, that's actually a lot of fun. Okay, so I assume that since you mentioned it, you're interested in it. Can I do that? Can I assume? Sorry?
Bitcoin and AI in particular.
Very nice. Bitcoin and AI. Okay, very good. So we have Bitcoin and AI. We have all of the above, but we have Bitcoin and AI as a priority. Okay, that's great. What else? Nobody's interested in the Evidence Act.
No, I'm actually interested. Some comparison, because you said you're from Pakistan, so within the SAARC areas about our electronic evidence, we can...
Sure, absolutely. Happy to do that. Thank you. In fact, you should be happy about your Evidence Act.
Yes, I'd like to find out about the civil and criminal law elements of
Excellent. Thank you very much. Very good. So civil and criminal evidence distinction and how this works for electronic evidence. You want to see how you stack up against other SAARC countries. We have AI and blockchain. This is good. This is a lot. This is fairly good. And somebody said, no, I definitely want to know about the Evidence Act. I think you mentioned it. Anyone else? Just one second. I'll bring the mic to you. No, we want everybody to hear you.
How far along is prosecutions with regard to electronic evidence? How far they are going? Are they according to the standards and these such of things? What you have observed?
So you want to know how is so there's two different things. There's prosecution, and then there's your investigation by the police, right? Or investigation agencies. Which one are you more interested in, or both? Both, okay. How are they doing? In my assessment, you want me to defame? I'm joking, it's a joke. It's a joke. No, the progress, exactly. Well, no, I'm just joking. So we'll discuss how, again, you stack up with respect to that. Okay. Anything else? This is a lot to, yes, please.
I would like to know about the variances of admissibility of electronic evidence in different jurisdictions.
Very legal question. Thank you very much. Yes, sorry.
If you can, I would like to know, would the introduction of a data protection and privacy bill make it more complicated for data processors or controllers during submission of private practice, but civil? Civil.
What kind of clients do you have? Can I ask if you know?
Some technological companies, that's why.
Now I know why. Good question. Very good question. Sorry.
I think I would like some insight because we are working right now on AI assessment in the region. So there are certain standards of governance. Let's say we are working with UNESCO right now of having ethical frameworks and guidelines.
Yeah.
So
You'd like to know about the ethical frameworks regarding
yes.
AI and regulation?
Yes, right now we are working on a readiness assessment because that's the first stage. So with it, data privacy and all the regulations and act will be coming in first. But with it's very important to understand the community, the jurisdiction and everything. So we are we're right now working on the basic assessment, readiness assessment of Maldives to proceed with it. So a good insight. AI framework, that will be the first stage. With it, the Data Privacy Act and other copyright, other related. So we are working on an assessment right now. So an insight, since you have a lot of experience, so I think an insight would be really good. Yeah.
Okay, that's a lot. I mean, that's going to take us at least 2 hours, if not longer, frankly. How about this? Let's see. So here's what we have as a list. We have a very legal question about admissibility of electronic evidence in comparison with other countries, which kind of connects with the same question that you asked. We can also do a sub-comparison with SARC. We have a question on, and I'll bunch these together, AI and data protection and IPR, readiness and stuff. So that's one bunch. Please help me remember, because I'm not writing this down. I usually would have a board. It's okay, no problem. And what else did we forget? Civil and criminal evidence. I would like to bunch that with that question, if you don't mind. So that's one set. Civil and criminal evidence, the Evidence Act, how do we match up with other countries? This is going to be, this may seem like a boring debate, but I find it very interesting, and I think there are people in this audience who will find this interesting, because it can be, I don't think controversial, but actually fairly, there's vigorous discussions around these. So that's one. Data protection, AI. Second, blockchain. Am I forgetting something? Nope. Already ready, set? Nope, sorry. Say again? Sorry, investigation and prosecution. Maybe I'll start with that. That's a good way to start, right? Let me tell you, okay. So that will start with your question, and then we'll go into this. If I forget something, please bring me back. And while you're doing this, blockchain, can you look up on your phones, put in the search string, I'll tell you exactly what to write down. It says online hash generator, hash, like a HASH, hash generator, and you'll find a website called BrowserLing, L-I-N-G, on the Google result that will come up. Okay, so online hash generator, you see BrowserLing? Okay, one person says yes. Anybody else who found browser? 2 say yes. 3, 4, 5 say yes. 6 says, okay. If you could click on BrowserLing, it will take you to the hash page of BrowserLing. This is why I wanted you to go through Google. Otherwise, if you go there, then you don't know where to go directly. Okay, so just go there and keep it with you, because you'll be doing something related to that. And I will also ask one other thing, since you have your phones with you. I would like you, are you connected to the Wi-Fi? Everybody's connected to the Wi-Fi? Yeah, okay, okay. So we will have a discussion on something to do with IP address. I know it's not something you wanted to know, but it might be fun for you to see how this works out, because it's surprising for people who do this for the first time. So we'll do that. So that's the second thing I want you to do on your phones. We'll do that later. The third thing I want you to do is Google the word, let's say, island of Yap money. Or money, island of Yap, either way. Did you find it? Did you see images of big rocks? Yeah, good, okay, fine, that's good. We'll come back to that, okay, thank you. So those 3 things I'll do in an interactive way. We'll come back to that. So let me ask with this, let me start with your question. The question that you asked was, what is the status of our prosecution and our investigation services? Okay. I'm going to make a general comment about Maldives. And okay, so I promise to say whatever I believe honestly, not because I'm trying to please somebody. Okay, I swear to God. And I live in Dubai, so Wallahul Azim, okay? That's what really. When I first came here in 2013, and I didn't come for a long time, so it's not as if I've been coming constantly since 2013, and I still haven't been to a beach in the water in Maldives to this day. This is my 5th or 6th trip. Something always happens, okay? Imagine that. And the first time I came, I did stay at Bandos Island, but never went in because we were doing workshops, okay? So anyway, I was shocked because I came here and I went to the old police office. I don't know what it was called then, but down in the basement, I think we passed by it yesterday. There was the server room in 2013. And having pretty good knowledge about other countries and how they're functioning, and I'm not talking about South Asia only, I'm talking about other countries. And they showed me a couple of things. I want to see what your reaction to it is. Number one, they showed me that all the islands that had police stations had connectivity to the main island. So the server room actually was able to, in 2013, connect to, and when the complaints, et cetera, were lodged, and it was done in your local language. I was shocked. Couldn't believe my eyes. Because that level of, number one, localization of the data, digitize it, localize it, digitization of police records, okay? And thirdly, that kind of connectivity throughout whatever you're, and given particularly the fact is that you don't have land from one island to another, right? It's a connectivity issue, was amazing. So that was already something that impressed me. Then, some years later, I met the prosecution service. And what I've been amazed by, I'll be honest with you, and you can leave the room so I can talk about you, is that the prosecution service was very thoughtful about the legislation they were looking at. So I was talking about the Budapest Convention on Cybercrime. That was my job at that time. And I was amazed at the kind of understanding and interest there was with respect to international frameworks, number one. I've never said this to you. It was really, really amazing to see that. And there was a genuine intellectual interest coming from the PGO's office. Now, I haven't spent much time with others, but I would imagine that that's not just the PGO's office, it's true for others as well. The second thing I found fun and interesting was that they said, they were you were the first ones to say, can you help us with your electronic evidence? I've done it for other countries, but you were the first one to say, can you help us with an area we know we can't find anything in this? If you go and you search in Google, electronic evidence law, you won't find anything. You have some very bad models. I won't mention which intergovernmental organization came up with it back in 2000 and it was a really bad model. It had the affidavit in it, as you remember, right? And so as a result, they were the first ones to say, can you help us in this? So it was very advanced thinking that we're bringing a cybercrime legislation. It's going to be criminal. It's going to be evidence. It's going to be electronic evidence. But how do we deal with it within our Evidence Act? So then the conversations with them about it so far. Now, to be fair, I've not gone to court and experienced how they have argued in court, but at least from what meetings I've had, etc., I was very impressed. Even today, in the last few days when I've had conversations, I'm producing, I should also mention what I'm doing. For UNDP, I'm producing first of all, a course on electronic evidence for criminal side. I'm producing a handbook for prosecutors and investigators. And I'm producing a bench book for judges, which is what was happening today with this conversation. So it was fairly extensive, and the conversation and the issues that they were trying to deal with within the Prosecutor General's office were actually, like, you could have had this conversation anywhere else. I could have been having this conversation in Europe. I could have been having this conversation in Southeast Asia. So it absolutely world-class standard, number one. Number two, let me now come, if that's okay, have given you that answer. I want to come to the question you asked about STARK because it's connected. Now we dovetail through you into that. So you are one of the few people who have a proper provision related to electronic evidence. Other people have provisions related to electronic evidence, and I'll give you an example. The Indian IT Act, you would assume, because India is a big country, successful country, it's considered a power now around the world, right? Nobody can dispute that. And it has a huge IT sector. So you would expect that their legislation would be world-class. It would be some of the best. And a lot of people from here and Sri Lanka go there to study. This is normal, it's natural, and it makes sense, right? Because of the familiarity and all various reasons, right? Your legislation is by far, hands down, way ahead of the region than anyone else's. And I come from Pakistan, so we're behind you as well. When I introduced the Electronic Transactions Ordinance in my country, we were number one in the region. This is 2002, because others didn't have it. Since then, we haven't progressed. So that's just Pakistan. We've had other things happen, but they've been more regressive steps than progressive steps. But India came out with the IT Act. You must have heard about the IT Act in India. And it has provisions which are, And I'll now talk about the admissibility and the issues of electronic evidence. So this is kind of working out, actually. This whole, everything is sort of touching or dovetailing into something else. And their provision related to the IT Act was unfortunate. It requires you to give a certificate every time you produce evidence of the person who actually created the data. Okay? Now, the question, and he has to give it an affidavit on oath. Okay? Now, fine, you can, yes. So I can't recall what Malaysia is. Maybe it has the same one, but I'll tell you where this came from. First, let me tell you what the problem there is, because you're asking about South Asia, so SAARC. First, let me cover SAARC, and then we'll go to other places. So that is a major problem. And now let me tell you why it's a problem, then I'll talk about historically where it came from. Where did the problem come from? Where did Corona come from? I don't know where COVID came from, but we can definitely tell you where this stuff came from. So, so the IT Act has this problem, and now let me ask you a simple question. In a civil case, and now we're getting into the question of civil and criminal law a little bit, but we'll deal with this properly. In the civil law, there's a plaintiff and there's a defendant. Or there's other parties, right? Many defendants mostly. Sometimes there are more than one plaintiff. So they're parties to a case. And those parties to the case can give affidavits because they're in control mostly, unless the other party has the evidence, they are in control of the computer systems by which they produce the evidence. They have their phones, they have other things. They can say, I produce this, and as an affidavit. Now let me tell you this. If I produce an affidavit, but the way I produce the evidence is not technically sound, what's the point of an affidavit? It's useless, utterly useless, right? I take a photograph of my phone and I say, here you go. And there's an affidavit. Very nice, well done, check. Good job. Is that evidence? This is a silly way of trying to basically, now to be fair, that the provision there says that it has to relate to the computer, that the computer must be working, operations should be working sound. Half of the people doing this don't know. Do I know whether my computer is working properly? Can you say that? On oath, there were no problems with my computer. My computer was working properly. I am the only controller of this computer. I mean, these are things that you cannot say. The same problem, okay, so now this is the civil, right? Let me now switch to the criminal area. So imagine what's going to happen is that if I want the person who has generated the data, I hope you don't mind me standing like this, the person who's generated the data to be the person who, or operator of the computer that generated the data, to give an affidavit. Now think about the criminal case. Can I tell the accused, so I go raid a place, take his computer, his laptop, and now I say, please, Mr. Accused, before I can submit your evidence before the court, can you please sign this affidavit? First of all, everybody's smiling because of course he won't sign it. He must be really silly, right? First of all. Secondly, what am I violating if I ask him to do that? Lawyers in the room. What fundamental right of his is being violated? Not the PGO's office. The right of defending, but there's another word for it. Self-incrimination. Lawyer, there you go, right? You can't force him to do any of that stuff. So the provision is absolutely not suited, if nothing else, to criminal law. Also, most of the time, the evidence that you will take out, that evidence is not being generated by the person you're raiding. You're not going to necessarily get assistance from the person who's responsible for the computer to give you an affidavit. It's not going to happen. So when it comes to criminal provision, criminal evidence, this kind of a provision is absolutely, first of all, pointless, has no value. Secondly, it's completely inappropriate when it comes to criminal cases and criminal evidence. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. Now, Kenya has the same provision because Kenya copied India. Well, I'll tell you where the genesis came from. Can't be absolutely sure it was India, but they say they got it from India. I will show you where the genesis came from. Their problem is they have CCTV camera coverage of a crime. It's clear to everybody what the crime is, and this is me discussing with judges in Kenya when we were doing training, and they said very simply this, and I'm not talking about junior judges, I'm talking about senior judges. I won't say who because it's not appropriate for me to say, who said very clearly the following. They said, we know this person committed the offense. We have only CCTV camera. What are we going to do? Because the law requires an affidavit from the person who generated that data. We can't find that person. Because it could be social media. Now, how do you find that video that was taken and was reported on social media, made viral? The evidence is there. Maybe you have 2, 3 different angles of it as well, but you don't have someone who's willing to give an affidavit. So you have a problem. In the same training, a judge from Ghana came, who actually I had trained years ago in 2015. She now is in the Supreme Court. And she said, we in Ghana did not put this provision in. Right? For them, life is easier. They treat electronic evidence just like any other evidence. There's no need for a special affidavit. So just on the same continent, on the west and the east, look at the difference. Look at the difference in how the judges have, and they're struggling. It's not fair to them. So legislation makes a big difference, what you put inside a legislation. Now let me tell you where this came from. It's being recorded. So I'll tell you the history. When initially electronic evidence be considered, there was a fear about electronic evidence. I mentioned this the other day. I'll use the same example. How many people here seen Space Odyssey 2001? Very nice, excellent. How many people saw Terminator? Okay, so or any of the Terminators anyway, right. So the idea that a computer would start acting on its own in a way that is malicious or is a way that will basically be harmful, right? That's the idea. And there are many stories like this, many AI, especially today, that's what we say, what if the AI becomes completely sentient and we will have problems, right? So at that time, back in the 60s, because if you remember, Space Odyssey is not actually 70s, actually late 60s. By then, the idea that a computer, and HAL 2000 or something it was called, would take over this is how old I am, you see. So would take over the entire spaceship and would create havoc with the people who are on board, etc. This was an idea that existed. So there was a suspicion and doubt related to electronic devices. It still exists today with AI, right? We're still scared of it. So that fear said, well, okay, now if you're going to produce evidence that is computer generated, how will you make sure that that evidence is secure? How do we do this? And the answer was, okay, fine. We don't know what the answer is. We don't understand the technology. I don't think I can take an IBM mainframe, come to a judge and explain to him how an IBM mainframe works. The judge will not understand it. The bits and bytes and you used to have cards, right, for programming at one time. I don't know if you're aware of it. It had little holes, punched holes inside it. So how would you explain this to a court? And the court has said, look, this is too much for me. So make it easy. I trust you. You're the operator of the IBM machine. You give me an affidavit or certificate. That's lazy, right? That's not really understanding the issue. But you can understand at that time, it's very difficult for those people to have understood it. How a computer works. Today, it's a different thing. You're used to these things. You're interested in technology. You understand bits and bytes to some extent. You're not so scared of it, right? So at that time, the rule that was made was, okay, you give me a certificate, and we're done. And if there's a problem, the other barrister on the other side will challenge you. And then he will have some very technical arguments, and we will see. Okay, so that was basically the simplest way that people said that you need, and then the affidavit should have things like it was operating properly, that everything was functioning properly, that I am the person in charge, blah, 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 all these sort of various things. This was in the Civil Evidence Act of the UK. Which one? Civil evidence. It was not in the criminal. The criminal, there were different, pace was slightly different. What happened was people picked it up, put it into the general evidence. Now it applies to both. You see the problem? What made sense for civil proceedings, because it does, it's okay, this is something we can live with. You're the defendant? Show me. You're the plaintiff? Okay, you can show me. How do you do this in the civil? I explained to you in the criminal law, it's just very ridiculous to put it in. So people started taking it out, and also, as we know, in 2000, there was another organization that created a model law on electronic evidence, which incorporated all of this. That then got distributed through Commonwealth countries. They thought fantastic, including the one you mentioned, and said, copy-paste. And India must know what it's doing. India's not silly. They know what they're doing. We must follow them. In Pakistan, every piece of legislation that we used to come out with, we all, even in our cases and judgments, what do we? What does the Indian Supreme Court say? What is Indian legislation? That has stopped now to a large extent. Because we're beginning to realize it's not necessarily the only place one should look at, right? Okay, so this happens. This is normal. It is nothing to be, embarrassed about. Many countries are doing it. When I started writing the Electronic Transactions Ordinance in 2002, I was presented, I joined that team a little later. Already that had, I think, 1 or 2 meetings within the ministry, and they said, here you go, here's the draft we're working with. So I went through it, and it had the name Madras in it. I'm like, I don't believe Madras is in Pakistan. Okay, because I realized that it's just a copy-paste. It was the IT Act. They're like, yeah, they must know what they're doing. And I said, guys, let's start with the international best practice. So you look at UNCITRAL. UNCITRAL is a UN body, right? UNCITRAL, you have the Electronic Transactions Act in your legislation. Anybody ever heard of it? Electronic Transactions Act. That's based on UNCITRAL. There is something new that's coming. The idea that blockchain, because you were interested in it, also has a model law now. It's not called the blockchain model law. It's called the immutable transferable records legislation or model law. Okay, anyway. So this is what happened with respect to that. So I think I've answered your question. I've answered a little bit of your question. I've answered your question for sure. And now let's go to the gentleman to your right. The question regarding what's in your legislation. Okay, so when we were drafting the legislation in Maldives, one of the questions that came out was the same issue that we just discussed. Do we follow India? Or do we have something different? And the beauty of it, this is why I'm sort of impressed with the PGO's office, is the following. They actually said, okay, we have this problem, fine, let's find solutions to it, but there's other problems also. I said, what are the problems? He said, look, if you ask a service provider from abroad, like Google or Facebook or Meta or anybody else or Snapchat, could you please give us evidence? And it's electronic evidence, whether it's in a civil matter or a criminal matter. When that evidence comes, the court will say, where's the affidavit of the person who generated it? So are we going to fly in someone from Google? They won't even come. Is that the standard we're going to maintain? Doesn't even happen in India. Okay? So for that, as I'm going backwards, if you look at section 67, one of the things they put in was what happens if data is being asked from a service provider abroad. So there was a fairly unique, that might be a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know, but fairly unique methodology of how to deal with electronic evidence coming from a service provider abroad without any roadblocks. The way it's designed is that if you have a roadblock, you have another option. If you have another roadblock, you have another option. So that's 167. The other thing we've done in 65, 66 and 67, especially 66, is we've said that the party, whoever is bringing the evidence to court, I want to make sure that this is clear, and then this is the last boring part of the law, then we'll go into some more exciting stuff, is that the party who brings something to court is the party who may provide a verification, not an affidavit. That's what it says in 66, right? So you may, and if you don't want to, that's okay. That doesn't mean you have to do it. You may provide. Why? Because it becomes easier. What happens if you don't? If you are a person bringing evidence to court, it's your responsibility to prove it. If you're the prosecution, you must prove it. But here, if you bring an affidavit, not an affidavit, no. Verification and sign that and bring it to court and say, I hereby verify that this is evidence I collected, and I collected it in this form, and it could be the prosecution themselves, you're done. There's a presumption that everything is okay unless the other side challenges you and says, no, I don't believe you. You did some hanky-panky, and here's my challenge. And then he has a right to cross-examine your witnesses, your forensic experts, or anybody else. Does that make sense? So it creates, you don't have to go and prove every single little thing. Because even today, when you have a civil case in court, are you going to sit there and say, okay, wait, I have a WhatsApp printout. Well, let's just spend 3 hours trying to do this. I have the next email. Wait, email. Okay, show me where. You have 25 emails. Are you going to sit there through the entire trial trying to prove every single email? Let's say, admit it. You know what admission is, right, in a case. Admit it, fine, move on. You don't have to prove every single element, right? Unless somebody challenges and says, no, this email is wrong. This is fake. I never sent that one. Okay, fine, let's have a debate about that. Let's try to reduce evidence regarding that. So that's the system that basically has been introduced in 66. And then we have a problem with 67, because here's what happened. Should I actually talk about it? What? I don't understand what you're saying. So anyway, so here's what happened. So we thought, great. We have a great section. This looks really, really good. And we'll put it in. And then what happens is the following. It goes in. I don't, because I'm not responsible for the process. It goes in, and there was debate, Indian approach, non-Indian approach. They said both approaches. So we ended up with 66, which was the more advanced. You know, we're going forward. And then we suddenly had another section at this, after that, that was the Indian approach. Now we got a problem. Thankfully, there's no requirement of affidavit in 67. But the weight, etc., that is being provided, all that is coming from India. Because, you know, everybody's scared, right? You're asking me to do something that is unique. No one else has done this before. What if I get it wrong? Okay, let's feel comfortable and clothe ourselves and wrap ourselves around what somebody else we think who's good has done this. Makes sense, logically. Okay, so that's where we are at with your sections, and this is the question that you asked. That's where we are with 66, 67. So it's there's some very good parts in it, which I think when you read it, you'll find work really, really well, particularly for criminal evidence, but they work well also for civil evidence, because you don't have a Civil Evidence Act and a Criminal Evidence Act. You have one Evidence Act, which is what the Brits did when they came to the Commonwealth countries, all the colonies, but for themselves, they have a civil and criminal. Okay? All right. Now, that takes care of that bit. Any questions about this one, because we move on to other things then? Any questions? No? It was boring, right? No? Okay. It wasn't even, I don't know, now everybody's dead. Moving on. Okay, so this was the part about electronic evidence and the provisions within your Evidence Act. So most lawyers, thank you. Now we bunched a couple of things. There was AI and data protection. There was blockchain, right? That's it. Those are the last two things that are left. Is that right? Now, should I do blockchain first or should I do AI first? Blockchain? Okay, all right. So that's what people are saying. Let's do blockchain first. Before I do blockchain, open up your phones, please. There were three things. Okay, fine. Yes, there are two of them. So open up your phones. You see browser link that you're on? Yes, you are already there. Please go to that website. What do you see? There's a little box a little further down in the screen, right? Do you see that box? You can type anything into that box, correct? I want you to type in the word Male, M-A-L-E, without the apostrophe, just M-A-L-E, okay? Just type mail, that would be the same as mail, right? So, I mean, it's okay, doesn't matter. Just type that in, M-A-L-E. Now, did you put a capital M in the beginning? Everybody did that because that's auto, right? So M-A-L-E, okay, now. I want you to see, just scroll further. Now, no spaces, right? M-A-L and no spaces, M-A-L-E. Go further down, you will see a list of things. Do you see a list of things? These are the different types of encryption. So before you do anything, let me explain encryption to you. Does everybody understand what encryption is? What is encryption? Everybody's saying yes, but like, is anybody wanting to explain it? Encryption. What is encryption? It's very simple, right? Encryption? Basically, sending data in a non-readable format, absolutely. But what is cryptography, which is like the basis of this? It is basically you're jumbling the data in a way that you cannot understand it. These things you see at the bottom are algorithms. These are mathematical algorithms, formulas, that scramble text in a way that it becomes encrypted. So when you send it, etc., you can't read it because you're not sure what it says. So try it out. Now, click OK. Did you click OK? And it gives you a result. On each one of those algorithms, you get a result. Have you seen it? Yeah? So if you go to that website, browser link, right? So if you, shall I start from the beginning? you can actually Google online hash generator. Online hash generator, you see Browserling, go into Browserling, you will see a text box, put in the word MALE, capital M, and hit OK, or calculate, the word is calculate, correct? Okay, so you got a result, right? So this is the same concept as 2 plus 2 is what? Equal to? 2 plus 2? How many people are asleep? 2 plus 2, how much? 4, okay, now waking up slowly. Okay, 2 plus 2 is equal to 4, right? In the same way, when you put text inside this box, it gives you a result. Now I'll do, just so that, you see it's a very long one, it's a very long result, so let's make it fun for ourselves. I want you to do the following thing. Look at MD5. Do you see MD5 as an algorithm? And you see the result of it? Do you see the result? Yeah, go to the end of it. The last 3 digits. What are the last 3 digits? Sorry? 3F? 3FD? Is it 3FD for you? Is it 3FD for you? Is it you see, it's the same for everybody. Because it's mathematics, it can't be different. Now, remember 3FD. Remember that, okay? Don't forget that, because that is the result of MALE when you calculate a hash on MD5. Now let's do the following. Go back to the text that you used, MALE, and change it by just changing the M to a small m. Can you do that? No capital. Same thing without a capital. You done it? Calculate. Does it changed? It's changed, right? Okay, now if I'm right, if you go back to the original capital M, you should get the same result. Every single time. Let's do it again. Let's change it again, go back to the capital M. You got the same result as earlier? Yes? It's mathematical. Now, what does this do for you? What this says to you is that if I take any kind of data and I put it through the algorithm, I am assured that I'll get an answer that will never be different. If I change the data in any way, what will happen? The output will change. Very simple. Does that make sense? Now think about the most wonderful things. I'm getting all excited. This can be put to. This means that this is the same technology we use for encryption when you are actually connecting to your bank. Because these algorithms basically are scrambling the data, okay, in such a way that basically your communication with others is connected and it flows properly, right? It flows without people being able to understand what's flowing. Otherwise, if you go to like some routers, and you'll be surprised if you basically can sniff the Wi-Fi router's data, you'll find that all the passwords you're sending, that you're typing in, every one of them can be picked up in clear text. The only time I can't do it is if I'm using a VPN. So if I'm connected to the router with a VPN, because currently you're connected to router, all of us are connected to this router, wherever this is right now. If you haven't switched on your VPN and the router does not have encryption, whatever you're sending from your phone to there and you're logging in, every single email and login is detectable in clear text. Okay? People don't realize this. So you got a smart guy sitting in a cafe, sitting there, and he's harvesting all your passwords and usernames. And you know what? He's not going to use them. He's going to sell them. Okay? So the way you ensure that this doesn't happen is you use a VPN. So you have an encrypted tunnel between yourself through your VPN provider to the bank or whatever else. That's the way you protect your information. That's why high security jobs that you will do will always say, I have to use a VPN to connect to my own server. Okay? They use encryption. So encryption is great technology. What else can encryption do? Now when the investigators go and they see something, they see something, and so let's talk about regular evidence, right? So let's say that I find some drugs lying here, and I'm a police officer. What do I do with the drugs? Take it home? No? Okay. Sell it? I don't know. What do I do with it? I bag it, put it in a bag, and then what do I do after I put it in a bag? Seal it? Who said seal? Tag it. You bag it and tag it, right? But you also seal it. What if I leave it open? That's a problem or not a problem? It's not a problem? Not sure? No consensus? So next time they pick up drugs, they leave the bag open. You have to seal it, right? If you don't seal it, what happens in court? What will the judge say? It's possibility of tampering, yes, right? So you have to seal it, like maybe with a signature or a date or something, right? Now, here's my question. When you pick up evidence which is digital, okay? You picked up evidence that is digital. How do you bag tag and seal it? You know the answer. So first of all, something I haven't told you is you have these devices that copy. And I'm not going to get into what imaging is. If you're interested, I will. But imaging is a special technology. It's not like copy-paste. It takes an exact replica, like a mirror of the hard drive, and puts it into another hard drive. And so it's exactly identical. Okay? If you want more information, please ask me. I will be happy to go into it in detail. Screenshot's not the same thing. It's not really integral. I'm not saying that can't be evidence. I've done this damage before, and I said no, and then said no. Now every judge in Maldives says no, there can't be a screenshot. That's not right. Screenshots are also evidence, okay? But it's not as good as this thing that I just described. But now let's say you've taken that mirror, you made this copy, okay? Now fine, I have been able to make a copy, I've been able to secure it, so I've bagged it. I've even been able to tag it, that's fine, because I've labeled it. I have a timestamp on it when I did this, so I know when it was taken. Everything's very good. But how do I secure the seal? How do I make sure the data cannot be tampered with? Say again? You interpret it. You encrypt it. Okay, encrypting is one thing, but what's even more useful? Sorry? You generate a hash. You put all that data inside that sort of a thing. You click calculate, and all the data that you picked up in that flash drive or whatever it is, it will generate one result. Every time you do it, it will give you the same result. If anybody tries to tamper with the data by deleting something, adding something, what will happen? The result will change. So we use mathematics. Cool, right? All those math geniuses who were like, ostracized and they weren't the cool kids. This is cool stuff now, right? Using mathematics to be able to seal this. And that's what a hash does. Now, there's a reason why I'm telling you this, because it goes into Bitcoin. You'll understand how Bitcoin works. And it's very difficult to do this without slides and things, but I'm going to try, okay? All right. Now, damn. You're going to have to bear with me, because if you want to do an exercise of blockchain, I'll have to find something related to that also. But there's a way to make that happen. Can you just bear with me for 1 second? Have I ever done the blockchain exercise with you guys? Do you remember? No? No, you don't? Okay, yeah, here we go. I can do this with you guys. This might be fun. I found it. That's incredible, I found it. Okay. Nope, that's not it. Yep, here we go. Okay, so we'll do that. Thank you. Sorry about the interruption. Now, you've understood hashing? You've understood encryption? Okay, you've also understood how hashing can be helpful for law enforcement and collection. And by the way, when I showed you MD5 that you've seen, this is the hash that is usually used by law enforcement to capture the data. They sign it by using MD5. They will add one more if necessary, SHA-1, SHA-1. And SHA-1 is also used on routers, same encryption, okay? Just of interest if anybody's interested in that techie kind of stuff. Okay, now, let's move to the next level. What is blockchain? Anybody have an idea what is blockchain?
I think it's like a process of, it's a verification process of building credentials. Then there are process for it based on having DIDs, registers, where you can eliminate deep fakes, I think that's very normal around, to go have a verification process since we are moving to a digital era mostly. So the verification process, yeah, because from where I come from financial industry, we use it to, yeah, okay, basically.
She's right about two things. You've talked about verification, you talked about financial industry, yes. Anything else? Yeah. Give it a go.
I think it's more like a ledger. It's a bunch of data's been chained together, so you will get the start point and the end point of the data, so you would know where it has been and where it's coming.
So it's a ledger, right? That's actually very right, because we're going to be using that. You're talking about the application, is talking about the technology. Okay. Sorry, I've locked you in. You can't get out now. Just to make it easier for me to walk up, I'll move it if you need to. Right. So, anybody else? Block, chain. Blocks that are chained together. But blocks of what? Blocks of data. So the idea is that you would have a set of data, blocks of data, okay, every single block has a transaction in it. It could be a contract, it could be your, let's say, degrees, it could be health records, it could be your driver's license, it could be anything. So it's a series of driver licenses, series of university degrees, series of health data, series of money or transactions. Okay? So it's a block that has data inside it, and somehow it's chained together. So all the mathy geniuses would love this because it's really, really, really nerdy. I'll come to it in a second. Okay. So each and every this is the first time I'm doing it without any aids. Because even if I had something I write on, that would help in some way. But so this is a challenge for me. It's going to be fun. Okay? Let's see if you can follow. Imagine a block that has inside it as text, right? This is what we did right now. On your phones, you did browser link, text. Just pure and simple text. And in that text, it says that, does everybody know your name? Naufal? Okay. That Naufal sold to Zahid his car for 50 euros. Rubbish, I know, but okay. Not the car, but what I'm saying. Right? That's the text, that's it. That text is inside that little box. It's a virtual box. It doesn't really exist. It's just a set of data. So far, so good? Okay. Now imagine there's another box, and it says, you sold to your friend a car for $100. That's the second box. The third, so like this, you'll have several transactions, right? Okay. Does that make sense so far? It's simple, not complicated. It's a ledger of transactions. Ledger of transactions maintained by people. Okay, we'll talk about who maintains it, but it's like what does a notary public do? What does a notary do? He maintains records of transactions, right? Yeah, this person came to me, this is his name, this is the thing, this is the transaction, this date, this time. Yes, it happened in front of me. He's like a witness, like official government witness, right? Okay, so it's a ledger of transactions. Now, what transactions? It could be the transactions that I just mentioned. It could be my health records. It could be my degrees. It could be anything. The excitement in the world about blockchain is that, my God, we found a way to actually make sure data can exist as sets that is public, openly distributed everywhere, not in a single place, not password protected, but secure. Bizarre, right? Like, wait, you're saying that the data is available with everybody. Everybody can have a copy. And yet you're saying that the data is not password protected. And you're saying that it's secure. It's open and secure. How is that even possible? Okay, so let me demonstrate how that works. The answer to everything in this lecture is what? Huh? Yes. Hashing. Mathematics. So what you do is the following. So you have a basic understanding, I guess, right? So here's what you do. You say, fine, I'll solve the problem of security of each block by doing what to the block's data? You just did it. You take the text inside that one block, and what do you do with that text? You want to secure that text, make sure that text doesn't change. What do you do? Huh? Hash generator, hash generator. We take that text and we run it through a hash. Now, once I've run that data through the hash, what does that mean about the data? Does that mean I've secured the data? Because now if anything in that block changes, the text changes, the hash will also change. So let's go over that once again. You just saw how hash works, right? Any text, if it changes, if it's going through a hash, if you're calculating a hash over it, it will always be the same. So far, so good? Remember, we're summarizing, okay. Now, this data inside a block is Naufal sells to me a car for 50 euros, right? I put that inside this hash generator, and I receive what? What do I receive? A hash string. Now, the beauty is that at any point in time, if I try to change the text to say Naufal sold it to me for 100, what will happen to the hash? It will not be the same. So I can test whether somebody has tinkered, tampered, or changed, or forged, or anything like that, the data on that block, because I know there's a hash, and I will test the hash with it, and I can tell that the data is the same. Is this concept clear? Simple, right? You take that one block, you take the data, you hash it, you get a result, and now you know that what's inside that block cannot be changed. I just want to make sure if this is understood, right? This is the first step. Now they're going to get really complicated, so I just want to make sure we're good so far. Yeah? So that block, whatever's inside it, you hash it. Now you have a hash result. That's like, so assume it's 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. It will always be 4. If anybody changes it, the result will change. So now I've secured that block. But what have I done? I've secured only one block. And I can do this for every single block in the chain. I can hash every single set of data. Does that make sense? First block, second block, third block, fourth block, fifth block. I can hash each one of them. And independently, each one of them is now secure. Does that make sense? Each one of them independently has a hash, so it's secure. If anything changes, I can compare the hash and I know something has gone wrong. Yes? But the thing I'm dealing with is called the blockchain. I want these blocks to be interconnected. I want them to be chained together. How do I do that? All of their hashes, one hash. So the answer is you take all that data and you generate even the hashes, and you generate one hash for them, right? That's what you're saying? But do you realize how long that will take? Because every time there's a new box added, right? Every time there's a new transaction, you add it again. So that is an interesting way to do it. No, there's a good way of trying to do it, but that was not what they did. What did they do? Anybody else?
Time as well.
Yes, so it does take time. But we have the ability, with what I'm about to describe, to make sure that you can add on and on without having to mess with what happened previously. How? Anybody? The child of a parent should be connected to the parent. And the child should have his grandchild, the grandchild should be connected to the child, in a sense, right? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? The first block should be connected to the second block should be connected to the third block should be connected to the fourth. And this is how they did it. Now, this is complicated, maybe, hopefully not. Follow. So I'll summarize before I start. Block number 1 has a hash. Block number 2 has its own hash. Block number 3 has its own hash. Everybody's understood this, right? Now here's what we're going to do. We are not going to do block 2 and 3 hashes, and I'll explain why. Just wait for it. Block number 1, Naufal sends to Zahid 50 euros, a car. That text is hashed. Now what do I do with it is, I take my hash of block 1, the hash of block 1, and I take that hash and put it inside the text of block number, and then hash it. Ah, yeah. So my hash lives inside block number 2's hash. I do the same thing with block number 2. Obviously my hash is inside there. Block number 1's hash is inside block number 2. Now I calculate the hash of block number 2. And I take the product, whatever you want to call it, product of block number 2, the hash, and I put it inside block number 3. And I keep doing this and doing this. It does. It does. But it's fast, and I'll come back to that. I'm really glad you asked that question. So every time I attach a block, what it does is it takes the previous block's hash, puts it inside my block, and then hashes me. Get it? This was easy? Okay, I'm amazed. This is supposed to be complex. I'm glad you got it. You get it? So the product of the first is in the second, the product of the second is in the third, product of the third is in the fourth, blah, 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 blah. Now all these blocks are connected. Yeah, I'm coming to your question, don't worry. Okay? So that's blockchain. How does blockchain work in real life, like in how slow is it and everything? So to come to that, let me tell you the story of Bitcoin. Okay, well actually maybe I'll just answer this first. Okay. So this requires many, many servers or a very, very fast one server. I mean, you can put the entire block on one server if you wanted to, but that's not the point of having this ledger. The ledger has to be distributed all over the place. You have to have 10, 20, 30 such servers that are replicating the same data. Right? You get it? So there's servers all over the world, all of them are the same. And they're replicating this data. And they're think about this, they're making the data available which is highly sensitive, okay, that you don't want changed, but there is no password on it. Anybody can view this record, which means the notary public can put the entire record of his record online without fear that this record will be tampered with. It means all the degrees of all the university students of this university can be available online and verifiable, openly and publicly distributed, without the fear that somebody is going to tamper with that university record. Same thing for health records, same thing for land records. You can verify it openly. And there is no fear that somebody is going to try and mess with it. Now you want to know how is this safe, right? I've explained to you by hashing it's safe, but I'll also explain to you in a method that you will see now how it is safe. So now open your phones again and look at Island of Yap. What do you see? I can't believe I'm doing this without slides, Naufal. You see the Island of Yap? You see the pictures? What do you see? Big stones? Do you see you know what those stones are? That's money. Yeah, I know. Everybody's looking at me going, what? That's money. Those rocks represent value. The bigger the rock, the more the value. So far, so good? Okay? All right. So, now they're heavy, right? You can't move it. You can't steal it. It's publicly available in the center of the village. Everybody can see it. And yet it is absolutely secure because of its weight. Do you see the picture in black and white of how they're moving those? Anybody? There's one picture where there's a ceremony to move those. Or you can say ceremony or you can say move. See if you find it in your Google. No? You don't see the ceremony to move it? It's a black and white picture from some time ago. Ceremony, move, transfer, I don't know. Yeah, is that it? No? No, it's not the same one. Okay, so let me tell you, it doesn't matter, you can't find it, I'll tell you. So the way they used to do it was that you see the holes inside it, they put something through that, and a team of people would pick it up, and then they would move your money. Bankers, right? So they would put the money down. And that's how, because it moved, you knew that, okay, the money's transferred from this person to the other person. So far, so good? Now, I use this example because this is an openly distributed, secure money. Okay? Now, let me tell you the story about Bitcoin. Here's what happened with Bitcoin. Now, how many people are young enough or old enough to remember 2008? 2008. There was a crisis, financial crisis. Yes? In that financial crisis, here's what happened. The banks were printing money. Everybody knows the story. There was a crash. the banks had been irresponsible and how they dealt with mortgages and certain derivatives. And so they had to be bailed out, which meant that the government said, okay, we can't have the banks fail, because if they fail, people's money in those banks will just vanish. So what do? We print the money so that people aren't affected, because then we will be voted out of office or there'll be crises. So we will make sure that we print money. So they printed money. There was a person by the name, or it's a fake name, it's a pseudonym, of Satoshi Nakamura. Satoshi Nakamura is, nobody knows, he's supposed to be, obviously it's a Japanese name, but it's not real, that's not really a person. Wrote a paper that is very well distributed, most people have read it. And it basically says, it's kind of like a political statement saying what the banks are doing and what the governments are doing is unethical, and it's this is absolutely wrong. You are just manipulating currency by printing more of it. I am going to create a currency that has a limited number of supply, and you can't print more of it. So it was to the governments and to the, and I will make sure, okay. So it was like a rebellious move. And he said, okay, so I'm going to create money that is limited in supply. It can't be manipulated. Nobody can speculate it, although people are speculating on it now in other ways. But nobody can manipulate the number of the bitcoins. And he says this technology will be publicly available and distributed all over the world. And everybody will be able to have a ledger and see this money through this ledger. It's not on one server, and nobody will control it. And I said, what? Nobody will control it. I said, but somebody has to run the servers. Somebody has to maintain the ledgers. Who's going to maintain the ledgers? And his answer was, you yourself, everybody will. So what does that mean? Why would you waste your time giving the resources of your computer to run Bitcoin? He said, I have a way. I said, what? I will give a challenge. So there's something called consensus I'm not going to get into in more detail, but let's put it this way, that there's a competition between people who are running these servers to first of all record the transaction quickly, and at the same time solve a complex mathematical problem. It's a challenge, it's a test. If you can solve the mathematical problem fast enough, and you're first to solve it, what do you get? You get a cookie. You get a Bitcoin. Okay? So wait, suddenly the kids are going, wait, okay, hold on. This is like 2008. You're telling me I can sit here. My dad has given me a computer, and it's meant for gaming. It's got a fast processor. Electricity is free. I don't have to pay the electricity. My dad pays the electricity bill. I connect my laptop, and I start becoming a ledger holder, and I start printing money. Then there's a competition. Who has the fastest processor? Who has the fastest bandwidth? Who has the maximum amount of energy? And today, this is now being done by people who have enough energy to power a city. Because they're massive servers, basically trying to compete. Okay? I've met some of them, it's incredible. The amount of power that they have that they can generate to run this show is incredible. The amount of computing power they have to do this just so they can produce Bitcoin. So you follow so far? Okay. So now what I'll do is I'll do something with you guys. I would like you to write down, and all of you are, now what all of you are? Do you have pen and paper or at least a phone that you can write this on? Okay. You are allowed to cheat. You are allowed to cheat. But whoever gets the answer first, I'll give you a mathematical problem, has to raise their hands first. So if you scream the answer, it doesn't work. You have to raise your hands, and you better get the answer right. Then you know, okay? You got it? Okay? All right. So you're recording the ledger, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to record each and every block transaction, right? Block number 1. It has a code. Write down the code. Or let's say, forget the code. It's too complicated. I don't think people have pen and paper, everyone, okay? So let's do this. Block number 1 says X sells to Y 20 items. Simple? Okay? X sells to Y 20 items. So far, so good. Has everybody recorded this? X sells to Y, 20 items. Something, 20 items. Items, anything. 20 things. Yes? Yes? Okay, ready? Okay, I'm going to give you a mathematical problem. I want an answer. The first person to get an answer will get a Bitcoin. 18 plus 4 plus 6 is equal to? Sorry? Say again? 20, what? 4? No, 28. Thank you for trying though, no problem. See, this is exactly, 28, who said 28? 28, you get a Bitcoin. Okay? Next one. Z sells to A 5 items. Z sells to A 5 items. Got it? Written it down? Trust me, you want to write this down because you'll see why later. Z sells to A 5 items. Got it? Okay. I'm going to give you a mathematical problem. 2 plus 12 plus 10? Sorry? 24. That was the 24. Next. Z sells to A 5 items. Z sells to A 5 items. Got it? Mathematical problem. 5 plus 12 plus 17. 34. Okay, very good. And the last one, A sells to B 6 items. We're moving fast now, huh? You see the processes are functioning really at a good pace. A sells to B 6 items. Got it? 4 plus 6 plus 2 is equal to? Who said it? I don't have hands. 12. Okay, 12. Okay, now listen to this. I come to this blockchain. All of you have this record, and I say to you that, I was going through this record, and for whatever reason, I will say that the first transaction that you recorded is X sells to Y 10 items. Confirm or deny? Confirm or deny? I say you're lying. I have the record, I can prove it. That X sells to Y 10 items. Am I right or am I wrong? Right? This is the power of the blockchain. It's as simple as that. You'll just reject what I say. Got it? Simple? Sounds too simple, no? That's the concept. Okay? So that's why Bitcoin, and I've explained the whole process of how Bitcoin functions, why you want to do this, why you want to participate. You saw why you want to participate because you're getting money out of this, and you also understood that the fact that it's open and unsecure, with the exception of the hash, of course, on the way that it connects. If anybody tries to tamper with it, if you try to tamper one of these, it'll mess up the rest of the chain, right? Okay? So that's why it's secure. So far, so good? Okay? Okay, blockchain. That's done. Now, we're left with AI and data protection. Now we get really political. Okay, my prejudice will come out. Okay. All right. What should I do? Should I do data protection first or AI first? AI? Okay, all right, AI. So I will do a few things. There's a lot here to unpack, so I'll do a few things with you, okay? And I will cover LLMs. Anybody heard of LLMs? Large language models, okay? ChatGPT, DeepSeek, right? Copilot. These are large language models. So let me explain how this works. On your phone, when you type something, you get predictive text, and it's usually wrong. And you're like, oh God, I didn't mean to say that. You send the wrong message, right? Okay? So basically, large language models are exactly, fundamentally the same concept, that they have processed enough data to learn what the next predictive text is going to be. Now, if you can do that well at just with one next word, two next words, 3, 4, 5, a paragraph, okay, that was dependent on a couple of things. Number one, you need to be able to associate words and the weight of words, the vector, and the weight of the token. You associate the weight of those words, and at the same time, you need a huge amount of computing power to be able to understand what is the weight of the word associated with the next word. So what this requires is a couple of things. High capacity of CPU, not CPUs, but computing power, okay, very high computing power that can go really, really fast. because it has to repeat itself, constantly repeating the same thing again and again. So it's not complex. It's not like a CPU making a lot of different types of complex calculations. One calculation again, 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 again. Okay. Now, let me tell you, anybody heard of NVIDIA? Anybody who has gaming laptops? Xbox? Gaming laptop, great. Xbox? PS3? 5? PS5, I'm so sorry. PS5. Anybody got PS5? Or your kids have PS5? Okay, kids, right? Okay, all of these things require, and you must have heard like, my computer's slow. He shot me because I was too slow. Right? Why? Because the gaming computers, etc., have a chip inside it called a graphic card. What the graphic card does is does, again, the same thing again and again really, really fast, but really, really fast so it can reproduce what's happening in the game, the graphic of it. And so graphic cards, which have to be really fast so they can keep up with the gaming, right? Because if it slows down, what happens? You get shot. Anybody played Call of Duty? COD? How many people play COD? Okay, wow, excellent, great, fantastic. I'm really getting impressed by this gentleman. Okay, right? So that's graphic cards. So NVIDIA basically focused on graphic cards and suddenly realized, okay, this chip does one thing repeated very, very fast. Oh, great, it can be useful for AI. So they had this is not what they were targeting. They were trying to be the fastest in graphic cards, and they realized that their cards had an application that could be used for AI. So what does AI do? So what happens is that, let's take, I use this a lot, so let's take the word sun. What do you associate with the word sun? Sunshine? Daytime? Light? Or daylight or light? Yes? Energy? Say again? Sunbathing, yes? Star, wait, who said that? Yeah, star. And then look how we're going to different places in our minds. So everybody thought sun is like morning light. Okay, fine. Suddenly somebody said, wait a minute, solar system. Star, right? Okay, has anybody seen Van Gogh's paintings? Anybody remember sunflowers? It's a whole different set of sun. Now, I won't say S-O-N, sun, meaning son as in son or a daughter, but that could also be a story. But do you understand how sun can have different, right? Now, if you're a computer and you have to predict what comes after sun, how would you do it? Because all these options exist. Which one do you do first? Which one has more probability? And that probability depends on the context. On the user, on the context, depends, yes?
Spelling is S-U-N, maybe probably daytime.
Probably daytime. So again, so let's think about your brain, okay? This is what when you look it up online, you'll see the same thing. Think about your brain like as just like your brain, and let's say it's like a cube. Everybody can imagine a cube? You imagine a cube? So let's say this is a cube, okay? Oh God, this is tough. A cube, okay? And this part of the cube is everything about sunlight, day, sunlight, light, sun, sunrise, everything here. Here, everything about stars and solar systems and the sun rotating around the earth and everything else. Here, sunflowers and sun, maybe sunflower oil, maybe sunflower something. Close to it is the sunflower painting. You getting it? Right? So in different parts of my head, I have different associations, and each one of them is dependent on, and if I run my AI chip fast enough, I need to figure out which one of these things which has greater probability and where would I go. So we call them vectors. So what you do is you weighting of each and every word and association. We try to figure out, well, so first of all, how probable is this next word? And which direction are we going in? Is it towards this direction or your direction or your direction. Just think about yourself as a mind. That mind had a thought about solar systems. Your mind had a thought about daylight, etc. It's different, right? So I need to figure out which direction I'm going in, and also which is more probabilistic. That sort of mathematical equation. The thing is, to figure this out, you need one thing. Other than the fact you need energy and GPUs. What else do you need? You need data. Data hungry. Because when I have a lot of data, I can try and figure out the probability. If I don't have the data, I can't figure out the probability. Does that make sense? Got it? So if I'm Facebook or Meta, or if I'm Google or something, I have lots and lots of data on the internet. If I'm ChatGPT, I love data. I love data. So what I do with that data is I learn from that data by basically running that data, that text, to see which words have what association and more probability as predictive text, and which direction they go in. Based on that, if I can do enough, I can start predicting what would come next. And then we feel that ChatGPT understands what we say. No. It doesn't invent. It predicts. But that damn prediction is so good that you feel you're speaking to a person who's innovating and inventing stuff, huh? True invention, is there something like a true invention? I don't know. Maybe there is. And if there is, ChatGPT isn't it. That's not what ChatGPT does. ChatGPT takes existing knowledge, okay, and tries to predict. That's it. It doesn't understand, it predicts. You get it? So it's not sentient understanding. However, how you interact with it and how you deal with it and how you feel about it feels exactly that way, that this is something that understands what's going on. It's kind of scary, right, when you first start using it, because you're like, wow, it can do this, that, the other. It also hallucinates. Anybody know about this hallucination? So as it's predicting, it can start getting predictions wrong, and it starts creating facts which don't exist. So it knows how to create a sentence, right? So the sentence won't be wrong, the grammar won't be wrong, but the facts within it are wrong. So for lawyers, how many lawyers again in the room? When you use ChatGPT, you'd be shocked to hear that I found a case regarding a judge who probably came up with a judgment using ChatGPT. And that's the first I've seen, because judges don't usually do that. I have seen cases which are publicized, which basically lawyers have filed submissions in court based on ChatGPT. There's a case in the US where then the lawyer turned around and said, yes, I did not use ChatGPT, this is real. And they checked it, like, yeah, this citation is fake. It doesn't exist. Because ChatGPT was hallucinating. Wasn't deliberately doing it, but it was just predicting text. What comes after next? Because it doesn't actually know. It's not from memory. It's predicting from previous. And you can tell it, like you say, oh, this is wrong. Say, oh, I'm so sorry, I learned from this. Remember, have you seen that happen? You ask ChatGPT something, gives you the wrong answer, then you say, oh, this is not right. Okay? I don't know if you've ever tried this. If you get the wrong answer, say it's not right, and it will say, oh, I'm so sorry, next time I will learn. I've understood this, thank you. So it recursive learning, and that's dangerous, not dangerous, but scary, because as it learns more and more, the other thing is, as every chat bot, or let's say, starts talking to each other, they start learning from each other. And then they start speaking to each other really, really fast. And the fear is that they start learning, I don't know where this learning will go. And so as they start learning, the speed at which innovation or knowledge and new ideas will come will be much faster than we can. In seconds, things that will take us years to come up with, right? So anyway, I'll stop there. Does that give you an idea what large language models are? You just replace the text to images and other things. It learns enough about dogs' pictures or cats' pictures, and that's why, right? So some of them is not right. Anyway, so we'll stop there. So that's AI, okay? That's it. Now, the last thing that we decided we were going to do was data protection, which is where I get into some political stuff a little bit, okay? Data protection, what does it mean to you? To an average person, what does data protection mean? Protecting information? Protecting data? Absolutely not. So the first thing I should clarify to you is it's a misnomer. Data protection is not about protecting data in general. It's a terminology that has been used. It comes from Europe. It is a protection of personally identifiable information only. And it's not about protection so much as certain rights associated with personally identifiable information. So it's not about data security. So it's not about data protection. It's about the existence of rights related to personally identifiable information, such as rights related to its collection, rights related to its processing, rights, etc. Okay? The concept came from historically before, right after the Second World War. Why? Because government used to collect data on citizens in Germany. And they used to have very, very specific sets of data on genealogy. You know what genealogy is? My bloodlines. Okay? And who's married to whom. So I'm half a Jew, I'm half a Muslim, heritage, right? Your lineage, exactly. And so the data was very precise and could figure out whether you were 3/4, half, 1/4, 1/8 a Jew or not, or anything else. Based on that, policy was created regarding what should happen to you. Do we, what are your rights? Do we take you to a concentration camp? Do we consider you a Jew or not? If you're 1/16 a Jew, you're fine. I'm just assuming, I don't know, right? But if you're 1/4 a Jew, you're in trouble. Okay? All right. So based on that, Europe said, never again. We do not want the government to ever use this kind of level of data that they collect on citizens to be used for purposes other than what it was intended. Right? Okay? So it's not about protecting the data itself. It's about what you do with the data. Clear? So it's not about data protection. And based on that, certain basic principles were accepted by Europe. And this is only in Europe. Number one, that you must maintain confidentiality. Secure it. But not the security element, but just keep it confidential. Number two, the data must be accurate. Before you collect the data, you must take my consent. I have the right to withdraw my consent afterwards. After 6 years, I can say, no, my consent is withdrawn. And then you have to stop processing my data. I have the right to ask you to correct first of all, ask you for the data, if you have data on me, like freedom of information. Do you have data on me? If yes, give it to me, I want to see it. From government. Now imagine your government, right? The government is being told all these things. And it says, okay, once I've got the data, I can say this data is inaccurate, it's not correct, fix the data. It says that I drink alcohol, I do not drink alcohol. It says I'm a homosexual, I'm not a homosexual. It says that I have such it's not true, correct it. This data is inaccurate. I have that right. And I have also the right to just ask you to forget me, delete. Data protection is a set of rights that have been created for citizens against whom? Against whom? To protect us against whom? The government. Mostly. So I'll come to that. The government. Private sector didn't collect data originally. This is something new. Right? Government used to collect the data. So the original genesis of this comes from the abuse, misuse of government collection and processing of my data without my knowledge, without my consent, incorrectly, then holding it against me, okay, then using it against me, or collecting it with one pretense and then using it for another reason. Follow? Okay. Now, that's what data protection is all about. So the Europeans decided, and they have, of course, a treaty for this, the 108 Convention, which has these principles. And then they have additional, there have been updates to this. GDPR is one of them, for instance. The European Union Directive was before that also one of them. GDPR is the regulation on global data protection in the European Union. And Europe said, now we want to make sure that other countries abide by this. So what does that mean? That means that if you're processing the data of a European, or potentially processing the data of any European citizen, EU citizen, you must abide by these things. If you do not, under GDPR for the first time, Europe said, we're going to fine you. So it applies to private sector also. Okay, we're going to fine you, which means that an airline here, it's not European, maybe it's Emirates. By no means is it European. And it has a passenger that happens to be European Union citizen. And he comes and he shows his passport. Now they're collecting that information. Or at the booking time, they took his data, date of birth, personally identifiable information, photograph, passport number, ID number. The fact that they're collecting that information, they have an obligation to the European Union to abide by all those things that I mentioned. So when it comes to the concept of one country imposing its law on other countries, this is a classic example. And if you don't abide by it, you will be, what will happen to you? You will be fined massive amounts. Now, country says, I don't care. I don't care if Europe fines me. Why do I care? Do you think they have to care? Does Emirates have to care? Why? What would happen? No? Okay, yes, possibly loss of customers, but not that, something else. Okay, be reported, sanctions, European Union could maybe do sanctions. Sanctions are not part of this process, but what else? They can be fined. If you get fined in European Union and you are landing a plane there, what happens to you? Not necessarily get arrested, that's going a little too far, but that's possible. They would have to pay that money, and that means that every time, they're collecting money from Europe, right? Their passengers are paying money. Their money can be deducted. The planes can be arrested. Their properties can be seized. It's like any other money judgment. I owe money in Europe. A lot can happen to me. So this is pretty serious, right? You get it? So therefore, a lot of people out of fear said, oh no, my God, I need to have cookies, necessary or not necessary, reject or accept on my website. Okay? Now, the original purpose was to protect citizens against government. Now also you are doing the same thing to businesses. But the problem is that all these rights that you have, so you wanted to know more about it, all these rights, some of them are not practical in this day and age. Why? I'll give you an example. I'll give you one example that if you quote every person who supports GDPR and supports data protection has no answer to this. If they do, please, you must bring them to me, I'll take them to dinner. Okay? All right. Remember what I told you about blockchain? I'm actually really glad we did blockchain before we did this, so it's good. In blockchain, you have data. What did we say was the main thing about that data? That it should not be able to change. So we call that in English immutable. Immutable meaning you cannot change it. It's set in stone. Now this is a public health record, or whatever record it is, maybe the government's records, and I've taken consent and I've taken your data and put it inside the blockchain. Now after 6 months or 1 year, you come to me and say, listen, excuse me, that data, block number 25, either it's wrong, either it needs to be corrected, or just simply delete it. I withdraw my consent, any of these things. What am I going to do? I can't do anything. If I mess with that block, what happens? Find me an answer to this one. It's a wonderful concept, but it is holding back technology. If you want to know about AI and regulation, I would encourage you, my God, people are going to hate me because it's being recorded. Go and watch J.D. Vance's speech in Paris to the AI Summit. And you'll get an idea and a taste of what's about to come. Now, I'm not picking sides here, but here's what's happened. European Union regulation has started putting a lot of fines and penalties on US companies. Apple, Google, Many others, right? I think Meta, I'm not sure, but I believe that's probably also the case. They're getting fines for various reasons. And AI Act exists in European Union. It has fairly detailed provisions about how you do things. So one of the things European Union is known for is very heavy regulation, detailed regulation, and regulation, like they're very regulation prone. Other parts of the world have a different view. They say, no, we need to give innovation, et cetera. That's the speech that I want you to look at, about regulation versus innovation, possibly one way to look at it. And basically, in that speech, what I believe is now starting to be seen is, for the first time, the Americans saying we've had enough. Fine, we'll just shut down our services. Okay, so we'll see how that plays out, because is that even possible, right? So there's a huge, also you can use sanctions against the Europeans. You're going to charge billions of dollars, we're going to charge you back. How this goes, what will happen, God only knows. Ask yourself a question, why is South Korea not implementing strong AI regulation, or Japan? Why is everybody stopped? Because they realize that these regulations, there's some degree of regulation or principles are fine. But in the war space, when it comes to battlefield, etc., you do need that regulation, because autonomous weapons are a problem. So that's a different issue that has to be sorted out. But we're talking about general AI. And initially, you saw everybody say, regulate, regulate, regulate. And then suddenly the very people who said regulate are now saying, don't regulate. The very people. Why? The answer lies in listening to, I'm trying to remember, Eric Schmidt. Anybody remember who Eric Schmidt was? CEO of Google. Look at his videos, Eric Schmidt, on AI and what's happening between China and the US. The next big battle and weapons, the weapons race, arms race, is about AI. Okay? And so the more regulations you create, what happens is then, of course, China's not going to care, right? They're speeding ahead. They got DeepSeek out in a few months. How they did it, there's debates about that, but nonetheless, okay? So there's an innovation issue going on. So should regulation be brought to pull us back? And if you bring AI, AI also feeds on data. How do you take AI and blockchain and marry it with data protection? So the one answer you get from the European Union on blockchain is, yes, this is a problem, but what you should do is basically never put PII on the blockchain. That's the solution. What? That's the answer. No, we need a better solution. Okay, so we have questions. Yes, I'm going to bring the mic to you. How long? Was it 7? Okay, you need 2 hours, right?
Let's say you have been in Pakistan in jurisdiction-wise. Let's say in Maldives, as you mentioned, there has been debates and discussions. So in Maldives, where will we draw the line? Not to go for very prone, harsh regulations, or just stick with the principles? Because we also have a lot of development when it comes to DIPs and registers we have to work on within, then going for. So such a jurisdiction, what is like, could be the mistake?
Let me take a few questions if you don't mind, right? Any other questions maybe or comments?
My question is about Section 66 of the Evidence Act. Basically, Section 66A says that it's necessary to provide evidence to prove the accuracy of the said electronic evidence. The exact wording is used is 66A. Yeah. The exact wording used is sufficient evidence. I think that's a somewhat correct translation. It's about the verification of electronic evidence, yeah.
So 66, you have 66 A. Any person seeking to introduce electronic evidence in Haven shall have the burden of proving its authenticity, yes?
Yeah, and then I think by BU, they say that we may provide an affidavit. Yes. Basically, my question is, and then I think C, D, E, F, G is mainly about if the evidence is questioned by the other party, how you proceed with that. Mainly my question is, does A not imply that the courts, the admissibility of the electronic evidence, the courts have to see whether there is extra evidence to provide the verification of it? And if so, and because this has come up in some ongoing cases that we are in, I'm in civil practice, how does the practical application of that work for every single piece of work?
Very smart question. Thank you very much. Let me explain to you what I did. Let me tell you this, and this hopefully will explain to you how this interrelates with the one. I try to use something that's been used before, right? In electronic signatures, under the Electronic Transactions Act, you have it. I don't know if it's in there or not, but with respect to UNCITRAL, its model law, there's a principle, and it's in some other legislation. I think Irish have it, I think the Brits have it, if I'm not mistaken, which is that electronic signatures are admissible and are presumed to be accurate. So there's a presumption. Clear? Unless otherwise proved, right? So, and in that, there was another thing that I'd done. For instance, I said that obviously you can either have a presumption, okay? But there's no presumption here right now. That you can have a presumption and have a rebuttable presumption. Does that make sense? Okay. And also what I did was, in some of the drafting I did, was create a setting. Okay, if you're going to be lazy about all of this stuff, one simple way is you come to court and you show a certificate from the certification service provider. That would be the guy who issues the PKI or digital signature, to make life easy for everybody, which is similar to the lazy solution, meaning you don't even go into the evidence, you just have somebody come and say, okay, I tell you as an expert, this is perfectly fine. So keeping that context in mind. What A does is, says, the person who brings electronic evidence to court has the burden to be able to show that it's authentic. That's what A says right now, and support that, right? Okay, now that's a problem, I understand, wait. So that's what A does. It creates a general rule that if you are the person bringing evidence, like in any other case, evidence to court, you have the responsibility to prove it, prove its authenticity. But remember, usually this will only happen in the case where you have a burden to prove it. Why? Because if it's an admitted fact, you don't need to prove it. Okay, so it's only the cases where it's contested usually, okay? Now, what does the second part do? It says that if you might, it's a may, it's not a shall, it says may, you may bring to the court a verification stating certain facts. This will create a presumption that the evidence is fine. So either what you do is you take the heavy burden and say, I'm going to sit here, take this piece of evidence, and I'm going to prove it, like I would prove anything else. Or you can be lazy about it, which is fine, to say, I have a certification and I certify that this is okay. But in the rest of the parts, if you noticed, it allows a challenging party to rebut the presumption. So you can create the first rule, you must prove it. Second, you have a rebuttable presumption if you bring a certificate or verification. But even that can be challenged by somebody who then challenged, and you read those things out at the end. That's the process. Do you get what I'm saying? So it's 3 different stages, actually choices. You can live with yourself and say, I'm going to prove everything. Well, good luck to you, fine, okay. It's not easy to do it, but if you're brave enough, you're most welcome. Because maybe you think that it won't be contested, so it's fine. Or you can say, I want to cover myself, and I want to do it in a lazy way. I just verify and say this stuff is perfectly fine, and the court then gives it presumption. But then that can be challenged by the opposing side. That's how the thing is structured. Please.
So the phrasing of in Devehi, it's a little, I'm not sure, I could be wrong, if anybody else has anything to say about it too. But it doesn't say a burden of proof necessarily. It says that it is necessary to provide that evidence to prove that electronic evidence submitted is accurate. So it implies that it's necessary either way, whether it's contested or not, and that the courts must consider it when admitting the evidence. All right.
Here's what it says to me. Any person seeking to introduce I'm going to skip stuff that's not relevant, otherwise people go to sleep, right? So, any person seeking to introduce electronic evidence in any proceeding, etc., shall have the burden of proving its authenticity. That's A. Simple, right? And then it says, finding that the electronic, that's just, that's again part of that rule. But the basic concept is, under 66A, the person who is introducing the evidence must prove it. Is that clear? So far, so we're all on the same page? B, the person seeking to introduce the electronic evidence may submit a signed affidavit. Again, so by the way, yeah, there are differences in the translation, I think, maybe. Because in the one I saw online, it says verification. Have a look, okay. Anyway, it says, the person seeking to introduce electronic evidence may submit a signed verification affidavit consisting of the following information for the purpose of proving the authenticity, etc., right? Now, that means he may, he doesn't have to. Clear? That much I know is translated correctly. And then it says, for the purposes of the first section, the court shall presume such affidavit to be sufficient to prove the authenticity of that electronic data and evidence. For the purposes of the first part, which is the purpose of subsection A, the court shall presume such affidavit to be sufficient to prove the authenticity of electronic data, etc. I think that's what I have. I don't know if that's true. Okay. So what that does is it creates the rebuttable presumption that if you bring the affidavit or certificate or whatever, I think there's a translation issue, to the court, then A is presumed. A meaning authenticity is presumed by the court. But then, that's not the end of the story. You go down to the next ones, where basically C, D, E, and F say you can challenge that with the other party, challenging it. So that's how I see it structured. If there's a translation problem, okay, it's good? Okay, it's good, okay. So that answers that question. And I jumped into it because it's, legal. But the question that was asked, let me go back. The question you had asked was, how should Maldives deal with data protection and AI, right? Is there any other question before we do that? One more question, because we're getting close to the 2 hours. And I can't believe no one's gone to sleep yet. No? Yes.
Would it be possible for you to share with us some cases related to admissibility of digital evidence? And yeah.
Absolutely. So I mean, this is something we can talk about. We're producing a handbook / bench book. And when we do that, we will see to what extent we can share it with the public. There is going to be in July a TOT? No. Yeah, there's July, there's a TOT. In August, there's also a training. And we're thinking of maybe calling in people other than, law enforcement and judges, etc., or prosecutors into that training. There's maybe it's a few days. When you do that, you'll participate if you'd like to, number one. Number two, I will see what I can make publicly available and absolutely hand over admissibility. Yeah, we'll do our best. I can't promise you exactly what I'll give you, but I'll send you something, inshallah, if I can. Okay, so let me now, there's another question somewhere? Question? Who? Yes.
Can the hash value be an alternative for the affidavit? Hash value be used as an...
No. The verification is designed to be just a verification by the party or by the person. The hash value is more of a technical way of being able to prove that you can do. Is it an alternative? Possibly an alternative. Maybe it's a way to prove 66A, authenticity. So that's what I would say. It was definitely that. So you don't need the certificate if you can show that, look, here, I got a hash value, right? It's authentic, But then there's other issues like, time and other things we can talk about that. Okay, now I've answered everybody's question except hers. I keep fobbing her question off, but I answer everyone's right there and then. It's not good. So her question was Maldives. Okay. Look, I don't know. This is a sovereign decision of every country and the citizens. My view is that if this thing is being battled out by two huge jurisdictions, why am I getting in the middle of it? Do I have to pick sides? Do I have to subject myself to a particular set of rules? Can I not find a way that I can actually live on both sides of this, right? Because to me, I want to have the ability to interact, because I'll tell you what happens with data protection is, the GDPR says that European Union data cannot be sent to a place which does not have the same rules as Europe. Now, the rule says that, and says the way you know that that place is secure is because I will do a country study, and through that country study, I will certify that this country is fine for the data to go to. Now, that means you have to wait your turn. Okay? So, the problem with that is that even if you bring your data protection legislation into effect, you will find that countries like to your north, like in Sri Lanka, their legislation is not the same as European Union. Is it going to be consistent? And they brought it in some years ago. Question is the Sri Lankan data protection legislation going to be given the seal of approval by the European Union that everything is fine? And if that is the case, then of course, then the data should be able to flow very nicely between European Union and Sri Lanka, right? But that's a long process. In the meantime, you've got to be able to send data to other countries like the US, etc. Now, if I am a customer from the or a company from the US and I want to send my data to your country to be processed, and suddenly it gets bogged down in these principles, I've created a data trap in that country. Data can't get out. Or other problems might happen because of data protection legislation. So my view about data protection legislation is, you know, the US seems to be moving in this direction, possibly at some stage, I don't know. But I personally would not want to move to that direction unless everybody's got a consensus. Okay? Because I want to be able to trade with the US, and I want to be able to trade with the European Union. Now, the European Union has something called model laws, which were that if you sign these model laws, model clauses, then you can transfer data back and forth from the European Union. But what happened was that the European Court actually struck down those model clauses and said those model clauses, and Schrems 2 said that those model clauses cannot be used. Okay? So we have a problem. How does a country that has not been blessed by the European Union, that you're fine, then transfer data back and forth? And by the way, the funniest, most ridiculous thing about this is that actually it's happening every day, but no one cares. So what am I investing all this time, energy into a data protection? Also another thing to keep in mind, the data protection does not protect all data, right? Remember I told you this? It protects this data. Rest of the data remains insecure. So countries spend all their time and energy working on trying to basically protect data, thinking they protected all the data. We have a data protection bill. That means all data is protected, all data is secure. And they find out actually no, it's only protecting PII, that's it. So what you want is a strategy that secures all your data from a confidentiality perspective, security perspective. That that's what you basically probably want, and that's what probably is a better way, in my opinion, to go. I would want the European Union to come up with something that, fine, without me having to introduce legislation in my country, I can sign what was a very sensible, very smart thing for them to do, which have model clauses. I sign the model clause. I say, yes, I am subject for this part of my business. So I can have two divisions. US division, European division. My European division is subject to all those rules and will comply with all those rules. Fantastic, I can access European Union. And my other part of my business is not subject to those rules and I can access US business. That would be brilliant. That's what I would want to wait for. Because at this point in time, me investing money in a data protection legislation gets me nowhere. What do I get for it? Nothing. Right? So if the purpose is to be able to access the European Union market, that's not going to happen unless they bless me. And then you can go check on your list how many countries have been blessed. That's basically my approach to things. But this is a very personal view. Please don't just run with it. Okay, tomorrow something happens, I come back to Maldives and they say Zahid said this. This has happened before. So please, 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 this is just my personal view. Hopefully it will be deleted. I have a right to be forgotten. Now, good luck to me. Okay, so that, I think we're hit now beyond 2 hours, we're done. I don't want to keep anybody longer. I hope this was helpful. I hope you enjoyed it. And inshallah, if there's other things you'd like to talk about, I'm always available next time I come. Thank you for coming. Thank you for attending. And a big applause to Naufal for having arranged this, and for the university to give us space and this wonderful look at this thing that they did, the publicity, everything. So a big hand to both of them. Thank you so much.
I mean, you already closed, so thank you all for coming, and thanks to the Bar Council for arranging this, and IUM for supporting us with the venue. And thank you, Zahid, for volunteering your time to take this session for us. It was very insightful. So that's why you have me, to cover that. Thank you all. Bye.